We are live now.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just stop my video for a little
Just
bit until people come. We don't have to stare at our blank faces for some time.
but you can start your camera. It would be great.
No, I'll start it
Okay, okay.
when the program starts. Until then, I'll just stay off.
Okay, perfect. Darini, you can take it ahead and kickstart the event. Good luck to you all.
Okay, okay, sure. So you want me to open the camera in both, like the Google.
Yes, yes, yes. Camera, camera. You have to on your camera. Your camera's on. Yeah.
Okay, so in both, like every, I mean, the Google Meet as well. Okay, sure, perfect. So, welcome everyone. This is Dharini Chokhadia, the event manager and the host for today's live podcast, The Next Experiment by the SciComm Synapse, a podcast featuring researchers and scientists. I am delighted to welcome our honorable guest and speaker, Professor Krushnamegh Kunte. Today, we will be in conversation with Professor Krushnamegh Kunte, exploring butterflies, their incredible diversity, and the big questions surrounding them. But before we begin, I would like to introduce SciComm Synapse first. At SciComm Synapse, we strive to be a bridge between the world of research and the curious minds in our community. It's a space where ideas ignite, questions flourish, and discoveries inspire change. Guided by our belief in thinking, growth, and sharing, our mission is simple: bring science closer to people in a way that's meaningful and inspiring. Now, I would like to have a short introduction of Professor Krushnamegh Kunte. Professor Krishnan Kunte is an associate professor at the National Center of Biological Sciences, NCBS, at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Bengaluru. He holds a PhD in ecology, evolution, and behavior from the University of Texas at Austin, where he specialized in evolutionary biology, focusing on the evolution of sex-limited mimicry in swallowtail butterflies. After completing postdoctoral research at Harvard University, he returned to India where he has built a distinguished career in evolutionary biology, biodiversity research, and conservation. Coming to, sorry.
No, you're not audible right now.
Okay, okay.
Now
Uh,
audible. In
Wait.
between, it's getting cut.
Okay, so what do you want me to do? Now am I audible? Oh,
Yes,
okay,
now you're audible.
okay, so I need to keep the YouTube on as well as the Gmeet, right?
You don't need to keep your YouTube tab on. Only keep the Gmail tab on. Yes. Now you can
Okay, good, good. I'm fine now. I'm so sorry for the disturbances. Introduction of Professor Krushnamegh Kunte. Professor Krushnamegh Kunte is an associate professor at the National Center for Biological Sciences (NCBS) Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Bengaluru. He holds a PhD in ecology, evolution, and behavior from the University of Texas at Austin, where we specialized in evolutionary biology, focusing on the evolution of sex limited mimicry in swallowtail butterflies. After completing postdoctoral research at Harvard University, he returned to India, where he has built an distinguished career in evolutionary biology, biodiversity research, and conservation. Professor Kunde is internationally recognized for his broad research program that integrates field ecology, evolutionary genomics, and developmental genetics to study the evolution and diversification of tropical biodiversity, particularly butterflies, dragonflies, cicadas, and other insect taxa. He spearheaded the establishment of world class biodiversity research collections at NCBS and founded Biodiversity Atlas India, a major citizen science bioinformatics platform that engages thousands of volunteers across the country. His lab's work has led to the discovery of over 40 new species and advanced understanding of mimicry, supergenes, speciation, and the ecological adaptation. In addition to his research, Professor Kunte has a strong commitment to mentorship and science communication with a passion for training the next generation of biologists and fostering collaborations, bridging science, conservation, and policy. His extensive body of work includes over 125 publications, public outreach through books and media, and leadership in national and international biodiversity initiatives. This podcast offers a unique opportunity to learn from Professor Kunte's inspiring scientific journey from field naturalists' roots in India to leading global biodiversity research and his vision for the future of evolutionary biology and conservation science. Thank you, Professor Kunte. We will now proceed to the questions of our conversation to explore your insights in more depth. Shall I proceed?
Yes, Dharini.
Thank you so much. You grew up surrounded by nature. How did those early years of schoolings and your first step shape your passion for science, especially being the first in your family to take in the academic path?
Before I begin with the answer to this question and many more, thank you, Dharini, for hosting this particular program, and again others at SciComm Synapse for inviting me to speak at this venue. It's a pleasure to talk about how I've developed as a scientist and as a person and as a naturalist over the years, now more than 35 years by now, uh, to talk about this journey that I've undertaken for over such a long period of time, and all the people who have touched my life along the way, and all the people whose lives I've touched, and all the people and students, especially who I've trained over all these years. So it's going to be a pleasure to talk about all of this, walk down the memory lane, as they say. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. So back to your question of how I grew up in proximity of nature. I'm not a young buck any longer. I'm 52 years old now. So for younger viewers of this program, it may be a little bit difficult to connect to what kind of a childhood I've had. And the reason for that is I grew up in a small town, Pune, in Maharashtra, It used to be a sleepy little town that a lot of people went for retirement to in those days, and it has grown into a much larger city now. But that's where I grew up, and my grandmother used to look after a temple, and that's where I grew up. There was a small one-room house, not even a house, really a one-room residence, in which I grew up, which was surrounded by a few trees, and there was a small, nice lane in the back, which had lots and lots of trees and shrubs and other kinds of vegetation. Where now I remember there used to be some special butterflies. A rare sight was this common rose butterfly, which used to come to lay eggs on one of the vines that grew on this particular lane. This is not actually unusual for my generation and before me to grow up in a neighborhood where there were lots of trees, lots of native vegetation, and where we were not distracted in some sense due to TV or internet or anything else that a lot of young students are engaged in nowadays, which is not bad, except that it does dilute a focus from nature, which fortunately in my case was not diluted, was not, there were no distractions. So I was observing all these insects, some birds and trees and all these things in my backyard, but that didn't really blossom into a career, that didn't blossom into a passion until had my until I did my first nature camp with Friends of Animal Society, which was also in Pune at that time. I believe it or not, I was in sixth grade, and at such a young age, my parents sent me to Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This was end of 1984, beginning of 1985, December, January of those 2 years. When I first went into a big forest, I mean, the trees were so big, we couldn't even see the tops of those trees. Andaman, Nicobar Islands have beautiful evergreen forests which are fed by nearly daily rain. And these are just still, even now, quite untouched forests and quite undisturbed forests, disturbed only by natural phenomena like, you know, uh, very big storms and hurricanes and that kind of things. Not so much by human activity even today. That was my first experience, and that just had me awestruck about nature and about these big forests and all the birds that we saw at that time. And after that, I had four more camps when I finally decided that, again, this was early 1990s. In Pune at that time, there was no concept of making a career in ecology, evolution, genetics, or any kind of sciences. Biodiversity sciences was not something that we had ever heard of. But in that fourth nature camp, finally, this was in Karwar, which now has lots of beautiful sanctuaries and national parks, which are really important for biodiversity conservation in India. So it was in that area where I finally decided that I was going to do a. I didn't know exactly what a career was at that point. I was in my ninth grade or eighth grade, perhaps. Yeah, so really young. But chasing birds, snakes, and mammals, which was my passion at that time, is what I thought I would do the rest of my life. My aunt once asked me, and this was again back in my ninth grade. My aunt asked me, "What do you want to do for a living?" And, all kids have dreams like, "Oh, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a soldier, and whatnot." I said, "Well, I want to be a naturalist." And she said, "Oh, but how are you going to get a job?" And I said, "Well, I may or may not, but that doesn't matter. As long as I get to chase all these things in forests, I'll be happy." And, living is made when you have a great passion, which you follow sincerely. And if you're good at whatever career that you choose, then perhaps it's not that difficult to build a career, to get some recognition for the talents that you have. And then, of course, all these things are valued even more now, much more than in the past, mainly because of the biodiversity crisis that surrounds us. And me and my lab and our collaborators play a big role in understanding Indian biodiversity and then what we need to do to save it, to preserve it for future generations. So these are the motivations. Coming from a poor family, I, as I mentioned, we didn't even have a house of our own. We grew up in this small room, which was given by a very generous person to my grandmother and her family. From there, my parents hadn't gone to college. None of my parents. My sister and I were the first people to go to college in our family. And I was the first one to do a PhD in my family. I was the first one to go abroad in my entire extended family. Forget about my more closely knit nuclear family. So these are some of the firsts that were for my family. And it didn't matter that I came from a poor family of largely uneducated people. My father, even if he didn't go to college, he used to read a lot. He was an artist. My mother was extremely permissive in whatever I wanted to do. I could go to nearby forts and forests all night long, never ask me a question about why I was going there, what I was doing there. Other people were worried that we might be going there to do drugs with friends, to drink, to do whatever that parents worry that their kids may be doing. And in fact, my uncle once asked my mother, "What is going on with Krushnamegh? He's failing exams. He's not going to college. And we hear he is out all night long. Are you not worried that he might be in bad company and doing really bad things?" And my mother told him, "I believe in my son. I know he won't do anything wrong. I think he'll be all right." And now all my uncles and others come to me saying, "You have built such a great career. I wish our kids were like this." So this is a complete switch. So the things that I'm going to tell you today and my story essentially reflects that you don't have to be from a privileged family. You don't have to have too many advantages to build a good solid career if you're passionate about something and if you're good at doing what you have taken upon yourself. Yeah, so we'll get into the details of how I grew up in a little bit as you ask me more questions and as my story unfolds. But from that background all the way to becoming a successful scientist and somebody who has contributed substantially to Indian science and especially biodiversity sciences in India. That is the story I would like to tell today. Much more than the exact research that we do, it will be what my career and life represents, what that might mean for some young people, and then, of course, for the future of Indian biodiversity. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a long answer to your question, but I think it sets stage for the story that I would like to tell you today.
Sure. That's such a beautiful connection between your early experiences and your scientific journey. It's inspiring to hear how those beginnings shaped everything that followed. Moving on to the next question, were there defining moments during your university days? What convinced you to pursue PhD and work in evolutionary biology and biodiversity research? Where what you had to do?
So I've already mentioned very briefly that I started with a very unusual background. Part of that background was failing several exams in college. So as I started going out chasing at that time birds, snakes, and mammals, that's how I started. Eventually, I got introduced to butterflies and then dragonflies and many other organisms. But while I was doing all of that, since I was a child, nobody could force me to do anything that I didn't want to do. And remember, this is 40, 45 years ago when listening to kids, letting them do what they wanted to do, letting them follow what they wanted to follow in life was a rarity. And that coming from parents who had not gone to college themselves, who didn't have too many resources to offer me, was quite remarkable. One of the things that I didn't want to do at that time because I didn't see any point in doing so was studies in college. Yeah. So from my first year of senior college, so FY, first year of BSc, the 3-year BSc that used to exist during my time in college, I didn't really see any point in all the lectures I was sitting through and all the things that were being taught in colleges, where I was learning a lot. When I was in the field, when I was looking at birds and their behavior and their nesting and so on and so forth on my own, there was no experienced scientists guiding me in all of this. There were some more experienced bird watchers who were around me at that time. I should mention Vijay Joshi was a very prominent friend of me at that time and a mentor. And then Dr. Milind Watwe, who became a professor later on, he started his PhD after I had first met him. And he was one of the inspirations for me to become a scientist and to become a professional biologist. So these were the people who knew that there was something special about me. These were the people who knew that there was some talent that I possessed, and I was passionate, um, on the verge of being a lunatic in following all these things without any consideration for how I was going to build a career with or without a college degree and what I was going to do. So because of that, I really didn't focus on exams. I didn't see any point in doing that. I remember a story when in college I was going to college for an exam one day, and I was bicycling there. I didn't have I didn't have a motorbike at that time, so I was going on a bicycle, and I saw a butterfly laying eggs by the roadside. And I said, to hell with the exam. I just chased that butterfly, saw where it was laying eggs, took those eggs home. And then for the next 30, 40 days, I was photographing all the life stages of this butterfly from egg to caterpillar to pupa, and the process of caterpillar molting from its earlier skin into a new skin, and then it transforming into a pupa, and then the pupa popping out a butterfly ultimately. So I documented all of this, and surely I failed the exam. I had to give it two or maybe even three times. But that series of pictures finally went into the first book I wrote on butterflies just a few years after that. So this was my unusual preparation. So in university, I had one disaster after another in terms of academics. And because I failed exams, I wasn't allowed to go to the third year of my college. But Professor Milind Watwe at that time, he wanted to finish a project that he had started as part of his PhD. And he couldn't find a student to do this project better than me. And this was in Mudumalai National Park, close to Mysore. This is on Mysore Uti Highway. So Milind sent me to this national park to pursue the remainder of his studies. I stayed in that forest for a year. That was the year when I came in contact with Professor Raman Sukumar, who was at the time a professor in Center for Ecological Sciences in Indian Institute of Science in Bengaluru. And later, the following year, with Professor Madhav Gargil, who is a huge name in biodiversity sciences in India. So these were some of my early influences. When I came in contact with Dr. Sukumar and his research team in Mudumalai National Park, that was the year that really transformed my life and my career. That was the year when I finally saw working scientists in the field and realized what a career could be and what a life studying birds and butterflies and other things could be. So that year was the most uh, important turning point for me in my personal life. And a student who is failing at exams and not really going anywhere in terms of academics and career, certainly within a matter of 1 year, found the right opportunities to learn something to find his feet. And that launched a lifelong passion into studying butterflies, understanding their biology, and then that expanded into studying biodiversity in India and the means to conserve biodiversity in the Indian landscape. So, if you ask me influences, that 1 year, again in the forest, not at a university, not in a classroom, was really what opened my eyes. I've written a book about my experiences living in this forest for a year. It's in Marathi. For many years, people have been asking me to translate it. I might someday. But in that book, I've written that Gautam Buddha found enlightenment under a tree. I had an entire forest for that. So that was really my inspiration in turning my passion into a career.
Yeah, so that is so fascinating. Those defining moments really show how your passion found its direction. Thank you for sharing that turning point with us. And again, it's really inspiring. Moving on to the next question. When you begin your doctoral work, what were the big scientific questions driving you then? And what were some pivotal lessons or breakthrough that shaped your research direction?
All right. So, as I mentioned, I started as a naturalist. I was watching birds first, and then I got into butterflies. But something really interesting happened when I started watching butterflies. Even if I had studied birds, I have observed their behavior for many years before got into butterflies. I had never really asked a scientific question, or any question for that matter, in terms of how some things work, or what are the patterns in nature that might be worth pursuing, that might be worth addressing through a scientific lens. The year I started watching butterflies, I started noticing within a few months that butterflies that were common when I started watching them had really become much less common. Some of them had entirely vanished from the places where I was watching them. And then a new set of butterflies had started popping up in the same spots. And butterflies which were not seen earlier had suddenly become very common, or that were rare in a previous season had suddenly become much more common. So then I asked, how is it that all these organisms, they're there one season, not there another season? What happens to them when they're not there? So to find out, first I needed to understand the patterns. In science, the biggest thing that you can first discover, the first inspiration that you have for any scientific study is observations. And if you have observations that others haven't really latched onto as scientific questions, then you hit gold in some sense if you are a scientist. So as I started watching butterflies, this was the first question I asked, and then I did a short study. Uh, I uh, I watched butterflies in four places, four different habitats around Pune city, and then I compiled data on population numbers of each one of the species that I had observed in Pune at that time. And then I analyzed those data, published a paper in a scientific journal. I had not even finished my bachelor's degree by the time I finished this paper. That is how young I was. And this was a single author paper. Normally, papers are written up in a team. Multiple people contribute multiple things to a paper. Whereas here, I had come up with a question and then taken all the observations, collected all the data. I wanted my mentor, Dr. Milind Watway, to be an author on this, but he said, no, no, I don't know anything about butterflies. You have done all the work, so you write this on your own. And I did. And of course, he taught me how to use computers at that time. This was again mid 1990s. Desktops were not very common there at that time, and there was no Office, Microsoft Office or Apple systems there. This was, everything was command line, and that is how we analyze data, a black screen with green dots or white dots appearing on them. And that's how we did everything on computers those days. So that's how I wrote my first paper. And I almost became a celebrity as a young college student, because nobody in the whole community in which I grew up, multiple organizations working in the field of natural history and ecotourism at that time. Nobody had done anything like this at that time. And that really motivated me to pursue these kinds of studies further, because earlier everybody knew that I was a very good bird watcher. But now people also knew that I could study really something interesting in an interesting way, and then also see it through to a publication, which is something that you have to do as a scientist. You can't just know, you also have to tell the broader scientific world what you have discovered, and that is how science is built upon previous discoveries, and then you add more discoveries, something novel to what we already know, and that was what motivated me. So going from natural history, I became an ecologist and a wildlife biologist at that time. And with Milind Watwe and all the students who used to gather at his house every Wednesday or other times, but then every week, this went on for years and years and years before I got into postgraduate degree course, and well before I did that as well. And Milind has trained generations upon generations of students through their college years under him in his department. So I was never officially his student. He had just taken me under his wing, saying, "Okay, here's a guy who knows something, who's interested." And he had a whole bunch of students like that coming to his place every single week, and he would just throw an interesting problem at us. It might be, size dimorphism in raptors, in predatory birds. It may be something else. It may be evolution questions, ecological questions, some very interesting observations on humans. Anything under the sun was fine for discussion in this particular forum. And he always would turn up all these interesting, crazy ideas and observations into a very interesting scientific project. And that was a skill I learned there. So a lot of these discussions were in evolutionary biology, so I became an evolutionary biologist as well. So with all of this, I got into a graduate school, into a PhD program at the University of Texas at Austin, which was an amazing department at that time, and it still is. But when I was a PhD student there, almost everybody who was in that department was a superstar in their own fields. There were population geneticists, evolutionary biologists, ecologists, people who had studied communities of butterflies and plants for a long time, people who had studied Lavallos plant preferences and evolution in novel environments, people who were theoreticians who were doing a lot of population genetic modeling and providing amazing insights into the evolutionary process. And then there was a very prominent group of people who were studying how species trees are built, how the tree of life is built using molecular sequences, using DNA sequences, and using very modern methods of building these species relationships in this tree of life. And that was pretty novel at that time. Phylogenetics as a whole was a science which was at least a few decades old, but that kind of thinking is much older. Even Darwin and other scientists at that time had emphasized this kind of tree thinking about how species evolve and how biodiversity flourishes on Earth. So building those trees of life was something that was special. And what was even more special was how do you track any kind of evolution over this tree? So the methods for that were just being developed at that time. So here was a young guy from Pune who was just interested in everything under the sun, lands in a place where there are so many amazing scientists. And I could go and talk to anybody in the department. There was no rivalry between labs. There was no, this is my student and you don't go talk to that person. So I made friends in every single lab in which I was interested, and we used to discuss all kinds of things. Whatever I learned during grad school, I learned it much more from other students and much more from other PIs in addition to my own PhD advisor. So that was sort of what was going around at that time. And my PhD advisor, Professor Lawrence Gilbert, he was an amazing naturalist himself and an amazing scientist. Again, like me, he was a naturalist turned into an evolutionary biologist and an ecologist. So he took me to Costa Rica in my first year of PhD, and he introduced me to tropical forests like I had never been introduced before. I knew tropical forests, I knew tropical biodiversity, but never as a laboratory for science. And that is the perspective he provided in a manner which I had never seen before. Yeah, Larry's always just full of ideas, always full of stories of how people have developed uh, into great scientists. So as I was being exposed to all of these things, I knew I really loved butterflies, and I knew I loved evolution biology, and I was getting interested in these phylogenetic methods. So I combined all of these things together and decided that I was going to study how butterflies evolve. And the specific question that I was interested in at that time, and that work continues, but we have expanded into a lot bigger, a lot more expansive scientific inquiry. But the question at that time that I decided to pursue for my PhD was, how do butterflies turn into very different looking males and females? You might have heard that a lot of butterflies, the males are really spectacularly bright and colorful, and females may or may not be as bright as males. In some species, females are so different. Some of them might be cryptic, some of them may be as colorful, but in a different color form, that earlier taxonomists had classified them as two different species. This is, at the beginning of taxonomy, when people were just going out, mostly European scientists, going to tropical countries all over the world. They were finding all these butterflies and other creatures, and they were naming them on how they looked. And at that time, they thought that these males and females were completely different species. And only with further observations, these scientists and field taxonomists and ecologists realized that these were really males and females of the same species. So butterflies can be very diverse in their color patterns and coloration. Some in some species, males and females are so similar that you have to inspect them very closely to figure out whether it's a male or female. And in other species, as I mentioned, you can't even recognize them as one species until you know their biology. So then I decided to find out how these butterflies turn into these what we now call sexually dimorphic species. Yeah. So the paradigm at that time was that males are under sexual selection to be very colorful, to be the courting sex, and then they display to females, and then females choose males based on whatever characteristics that they have to display. So it could be the train of these spectacular feathers on a peacock, or it could be these beautiful colors on butterflies. So the idea at that time, the most predominant idea at that time was males evolve into very different things from their ancestral background, from how that species was in the past. And then males slowly start diverging from this pattern. And then females mate preference drives this evolution in a different direction. So it was a very male centric view of evolution, at least of sexual ornaments and what we call sexual weapons. So, weapons because males fight with each other for access to females in a lot of species. And then sexual ornaments because males display these ornaments to females. Yeah, so these are some of the very interesting terminology, some of the very interesting terms that are used in our life sciences. So that was the question that I decided to address. And for that, I chose Papilio swallowtail butterflies. These are very common in India. When I look outside my office, I see at least three species of swallowtails. And this is a very large genus which is spread almost all over the world, except in really cold places like Antarctica and the Arctic. But otherwise, you have at least one species of Papilio swallowtail nearly everywhere you will go. So this is the group which shows a lot of what is called mimicry. Mimicry is a phenomenon where species or certain population, certain proportion of the species might start looking like something which predators do not pursue. Believe it or not, there are some butterflies which are toxic to these predators, and they display this toxicity. They warn the predators that they are unpalatable, they are not uh, edible to these predators by having really bright, bold coloration, right? So this is called mimicry, and this is something which is very common in swallowtail butterflies. And because I was a very good naturalist, I could immediately see. I mean, this almost came as a great discovery in my mind in an instant. I didn't have the data, but I already knew the patterns because I knew butterflies really well. and I knew the natural history and some of the species relationships already. So then I found a species tree for swallowtail butterflies, which had just been published by another group. And I didn't have much funding because my PhD advisor said he could give me funding if I worked on his project. But I said, no, 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 I want my own project. I will pursue this independently. And then, therefore, he said, you have all my support. Just go ahead and do everything that you want. So I got my own funding, which was limited. I did my own research. I got my own data. I analyzed everything with advice from everybody else around me. And using the phylogenetic methods, mine was the first study which really looked deep into how these patterns evolve, how sexual dimorphism evolves in these butterflies, how males and females diverge from each other. And the model I found was completely opposite of what the existing paradigm was at that time. And what I found was that it was not the males which diverged from their ancestral patterns so much as females do. So instead of males diverging from their ancestral patterns to be very bright and colorful, either to evolve these sexual ornaments or sexual weapons, it was the females which were evolving into mimetic butterflies, and that was the divergence from the female side under natural selection rather than sexual selection, which was something which very few people were aware of at that time. And I did a small graphic model of how the traditional model proposed by Darwin differs from the model. The initial roots of that were in the writings of Alfred Wallace, who was a co-discoverer of the theory of evolution by natural selection, along with Darwin. And Wallace had very interesting ideas about how species evolve, how they are placed in different places on Earth, on different continents and islands, and so on. So along all of these things, and like me, Wallace had grown in relative poverty compared to Darwin, who came from an affluent family. So I had that connection with Wallace as well. Somebody who came from a struggling family and who, through his great natural history, became a great scientist eventually. So I'd read quite a lot of Wallace's writings, his papers, his books, and I knew what his thinking was. But then I took it to a whole different level by developing this model, and then I tested it in these swallowtail butterflies using this tree of life of swallowtail butterflies that was available at that time, which I could do very cheaply because the species tree was there. The question came to me in an instant. It took me a couple of years to develop this as a project to extract data from what I already knew and from the books in which all these things were there, and then to publish the paper, which came out in a prestigious journal by the Royal Society in London eventually. Yeah, so that was really my motivation. Combining natural history and evolutionary biology along with phylogenetic methods into answering really long-term questions in evolutionary biology spanning millions of years, which no other method can possibly answer, right? So that was really the beginning of my contributions to science in a way, not just follow what everybody else was doing, but blend all these different things that people are not using as a blend and then create a blend which was uniquely mine. So that was really the motivation behind what I did for a PhD. My um, groundbreaking discoveries at that time, and then eventually I got into the genetics of how these species become sexually dimorphic. We have published big papers in journals such as Nature and PNS, which is Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and many others in which we have published this kind of research showing how these different butterflies, and there's variation within species, there's variation across species. So how this variation is structured, what drives these evolutionary patterns, and then what is the genetic basis of all these adaptations, which are very sex specific, very species specific, very development stage specific, and so on and so forth. So this flash of a novel thought, a flash of discovery. This is this aha moment in your mind, right? The eureka moment, as you know from another scientist. uh, that can drive a very lifelong pursuit of a scientific career, and that is what that particular moment turned into. Yeah, and that small evolutionary study has now got into this much larger study combining ecology, evolution, and genetics, using phyletic methods and many other methods. That blend, as I said, is quite unique, and our lab continues to push forward on this scientific frontier, in which my students have done remarkably well as I have done, perhaps even better than what I've done. And that had just built a series of careers now from that one eureka moment.
Yeah. So this is an incredible glimpse. Your postdoc experiences clearly broaden your world view. It's inspiring to hear how each stage added new layers to your understanding. Can I go to the next question?
Sure.
Yeah. So, how was the transition from postdoc to the principal investigator? What early challenges did you face in building your own lab? And what helped you overcome them, especially while pursuing curiosity driven science under real academic pressures?
So, again, another anomaly.
Mhm.
Most PhD students have to start looking for postdoc offers or postdoc positions, and then they have to apply to 100 places before they get anywhere. I was not even thinking of finishing my PhD. In my fourth year, I got a prestigious fellowship, which was renewed again the next year. So I was on a fellowship. Again, going back to what I said earlier, I was failing exams. From there, after I saw what these scientists were doing in Mudumalai National Park, from that time, I have been on fellowships and on awards of all kinds. So I was already on these prestigious fellowships within the University of Texas at that time, and I had some time to go before my PhD was going to end. At that time, I was approached by two people already saying they were looking for PhD for postdoctoral research scholars in their lab, and would I join their lab? And I was like, what? I haven't even finished my PhD, and these people want me to join as a postdoc. So I had already written enough papers as a PhD student. By the way, this is again something that might be inspiring for people who are who are wishing to do a career in science. By the end of my PhD, I had published 5 research papers in really good journals, all at single author papers. Not one of them had anybody else as an author, and that was a little bit stupid on my part because I should have included my PhD advisor, as most people do, on some of these papers. But Larry was very cool. He was very laid back. He had made his career. He has like 17 Nature and Science papers in his life, uh, describing all kinds of crazy discoveries in ecology and evolution biology. He said, no, no, if you don't feel like putting me on, no problem. But that didn't mean that he didn't care about how my career was going. He was very supportive and he knew where I was headed. But I was an idiot. I was a young guy who really believed in what I was bringing to the table. I didn't see that just through kindness, just by allowing people to be, just like what my parents had done. Larry just let me be. And that itself is a huge help in building a successful career. Later on, I did co-author paper with him, but that's another story for another day. So I quickly finished the remaining papers, and even before I had defended my PhD, I already started working in my postdoc lab. And finally, I chose to work with Dr. Marcus Confrost, who was at Harvard University at that time. And then he also knew that I was a damn good naturalist and an evolutionary biologist, and I was doing something quite unique using swallowtail butterflies in evolutionary biology and phylogenetics. And I was just beginning to start doing some work on genetics of sexual dimorphism in butterflies. So Marcus asked me to join his lab, and this was Harvard. You know, I couldn't ask for anything more. And we did a great study that turned into my first Nature paper, one of my first discoveries, one of my first big discoveries that really made it big. It made a huge impact on the genetic basis our understanding of genetic basis of mimicry and sexual dimorphism in butterflies at that time. So that was my transition from being a PhD student to a postdoc, and I worked my ass off. There was time I was not asked to do this. I was not pressurized to do this. Marcus never demanded that I work harder than I was. It was just my internal fire that really kept pushing me. And I remember there were 17, 18-hour work days sometimes, and there was a period of 50 days in which I was observing a specific um, butterflies in a specific experiment I was doing at the time. 50 days, no weekend, no holiday, no sickness, no nothing. I needed to go there from 7 or 8 in the morning until 9 or 10 in the night. And then I came out of that greenhouse with butterflies which had closed that day, with butterflies that I needed to take observations on. And then I went back to my desk and then did some more work. So I slept very little. I did not spend any time eating on my own. I was just with butterflies all the time, observing them. So this is how I worked during my postdoc. And even if it was a lot of hard work, man, that produced that Nature paper and it produced many other papers, and it is going to produce even many more. The ideas I was getting when I was observing all these butterflies were, for those 50 days nonstop, were just life changing. So that was really how I got my postdoc offer, what I did with that opportunity, and that really prepared the ground to build this career as well at in my current job at NCBS in Bangalore.
Yeah, that was so inspiring, and we definitely have a lot of challenges while working out in our lives for the different stages. But it's really great. You are actually an inspiration to all of us. And with that, now I would like to hand over you the presentation from your end. So can you go ahead, please?
Sure. So before I start my presentation in this last leg, it's already 11:26, so I will do a very brief introduction. As I mentioned, I started with natural history. One of the first things that I noticed before my PhD, and that was one of the questions I pursued in the future from that time, was observation of this very strange frog. Frogs uh, don't really bring up very fond memories in the minds of lots of people. People don't associate frogs with really beautiful colors and amazing life cycles and amazing biology. But I bumped into a frog, which wasn't much to look at, but it had an amazingly sweet sound. Yeah, the males were singing. This was in at Castle Rock, in on the Goa Karnataka border, and I was just taken by this particular frog. I mean, I'd never heard a frog which had such a sweet song. So then I found it. It was sitting in a small hole, and then I picked it up, uh, contacted some experts, and that person told me that this was a species new to science. Nobody had. I'm pretty sure people had seen this frog before. This was a very popular place for naturalists to go watch butterflies and birds and plants and other things, but nobody had really figured out that this was a new species. Nobody had given it any attention. And then it turned out to be a new species, which also turned out to be my first species that was neuroscience. And then we published it back in 2005. This was during my PhD. But then I got busy with all the evolutionary questions and genetic questions that I was pursuing at that time for my PhD. Even if I had a much broader interest, you have to realize that for a PhD, you have to focus on something which you can finish in 3 to 5 years. And that is what I did. But then I'd never really left all the other passions behind. I was just expanding into other things which would help in answering some of the questions that I came up with when I was a college kid, and even before that, a school kid. So I just kept on building this expertise into evolutionary biology and genetics. And then when I started my lab, and I was desperate to get out of my postdoc, I had tremendous support during my postdoc as well as I had during my PhD, but I really wanted my own lab. What I wanted to do couldn't really be contained as a single postdoc in one lab. I really had to break free of these restrictions as a single postdoc that I had. And I really needed a lab with lots of students and collaborators working with me. So when I started my lab, of course, I said this is what I've done in evolution, biology, and genetics, but this is something I also want to do in taxonomy and natural history and museum sciences, species discovery, and then ultimately conservation. Unfortunately, my colleagues at that time saw the value in such an expansive vision of how biodiversity sciences could be built in India. And although I continued to do and still continue to do evolution, biology, and genetics and phylogenetics, biodiversity sciences was something that we took up big time in my lab. And all my students who have worked in the last nearly 15 years that I've run my lab have looked at some aspect of biodiversity. It could be molecular mechanisms, it could be very broad patterns of speciation, meaning creation of species, or how different species coexist in a community in any type of habitat. So spanning from this entire spectrum from molecular to ecosystem level processes and patterns, we have done something. Every single one of my students, masters or PhD student or postdoc, has done something in this field. And we have this expansive vision of where we want to take biodiversity sciences in India. You may have heard this. People often, in the past especially, have derided biodiversity sciences and species discovery and taxonomy as stamp collecting. Yeah, a lot of physicists and mathematicians used to think those days that this kind of work is not really science and this is not really hard hitting enough. Now they have proved themselves wrong, or rather, we have proved them wrong by showing that this work is not only important, it's also exciting for scientists. It's important for society, not only for scientists, but also important for society. It's important for a country like India, which is super biodiverse. We host four of the globally recognized biodiversity hotspots. It's the highest number of biodiversity hotspots for any country. And Eastern Himalaya and Andaman Nicobar Islands and all the oceans around them are some of the best biodiversity hotspots in the world. These are the places where we have focused on doing a lot of work. And we have also combined not only genetics and evolution, biology and ecology into this. We have combined taxonomy, we have got citizen science, which has allowed us to generate data, not just our lab, not just our group, but really the entire community of people who do this kind of work in India. And we have finally compiled tens of millions of observations on Indian biodiversity through the citizen science platform that I built, about which I will show you some of the websites and describe what we are doing. So this is really the focus of our work at this point. And now, after all these years, everybody is realizing what biodiversity sciences really mean, what species discovery is for not only understanding species and their biology in India, but also to conserve biodiversity in India and tropical countries across the world, really, for that matter. So now even mathematicians and physicists and others are coming to us saying, we want to collaborate with you, we want to work with you. Computer scientists and computer professionals now want to develop mobile apps and new websites and new programs with us, right? So we have really turned into this arcane passion for natural history and wildlife into something that not only scientists have embraced, but public has embraced at large. So people have always been interested in natural history, in chasing birds and butterflies and other things. Salim Ali became such a huge name, not for nothing. There was already a lot of passion within the Indian society about that, and Salim Ali made it even bigger. And we have been able to do that for butterflies and many other organisms that people are passionate about. So with that, if you allow me to share screen, I will Um,
Sure, sure, for
just share
sure.
my screen. Just a minute. Okay. Can you see the website that I'm showing right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the platform that we developed. This is ifoundbutterflies.org or Butterflies of India website. We initially developed it in 2009 as a platform, and this was, using very few resources and very little knowledge of how websites are built. But this is what we have done, and this has now blossomed 17, 18 years on into a wonderful citizen science project, which is very broadly cited in not only scientific literature, also in all kinds of brochures and books that people write on Indian butterflies. This is one of the key references on Indian butterflies. There's, in fact, no other resource as good, as user friendly, as comprehensive as this website. So this is something that we developed. Most of these pictures, if not all, or nearly all of these pictures, are contributed by what we call citizen scientists, meaning people who are not scientists by profession, but they are generating scientific data with these contributions. And now we have a tremendous data set. We have more than 600,000 records, or 6 lakh records on Indian butterflies with the citizen science platform and all the other websites through which we compile data for use in citizen science projects. And these data sets are allowing us to explore Indian butterflies and their biology, especially their occurrence and population dynamics, in a manner which was just impossible in the past. These are some of the numbers which show you the impact of what this website presents and the resources that you can show. As you can see, we have representation from nearly all over India, except, of course, in really remote. Really cold places or really hot deserts where not many butterflies occur. But otherwise, we have good representation. And this website was such a huge success over the years that people started asking us, why are you not offering a website on moths? Why is there no website on dragonflies and damselflies? Why is there no website on reptiles and amphibians and so on? So we just kept on expanding this platform to include more and more groups. So here is one more website. Oh, wait. Here is one more website on dragonflies and damselflies of India. This also has a fairly large impact on the data that is generated on Indian dragonflies and damselflies. Again, a great website driven, you might be happy to know, by a PhD student and another professional. He's a medical doctor. These are the editors of our website. We not only work with other scientists, we not only collaborate with them, we also collaborate with anybody who has any interest and any expertise that can be used in the service of Indian biodiversity. So those two are the main editors of this particular website. And then we have websites on moths, cicadas, birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. 8 websites in total. So this is the platform that we have. So this is the biggest citizen science platform that is currently very active in India. And then we keep on coming up with more and more ways to push forward biodiversity studies in India. One of our biggest successes in the last 12, 13 years has been the development of what we call IBMS, Indian Butterfly Monitoring Scheme. This is on the lines of the British Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, which was the original butterfly monitoring scheme that started more than 57 years ago. And then hundreds of thousands of citizens of the UK have been contributing to the data which has been generated over all these decades. So this was one of the monitoring schemes that I knew as a kid back in early 1990s. And my first study that I described, looking at butterfly population dynamics over the seasons, was something that I did in that year. And this is what we are now expanding, scaling up at a national level. So lots of people are now doing this kind of work. So as the screen just now says, building a strong community which will take up this kind of really long-term work. And this will go beyond my life. This will go beyond my lab and the people that I'm training right now. So this is really something important, something that has a long scientific future. And watching butterflies is not only a great thing for science, it's also a great fun for people who participate in this. As you can see, there are really young kids to people who are older, people who might be retired, and it's really a great community activity for anybody who is interested in going out to forest. You don't have to be an expert, but you do need to have a lot of enthusiasm for working with others and doing something cool on butterflies. So this is another thing, and of course we are scientists, so we do develop a fairly serious collection of insects, especially butterflies, moths, odonates, which is dragonflies and damselflies, is the biggest collection that we have developed. These are the research collections which drive a lot of the science that we do. So we not only do a lot of biodiversity related work in the field, we have to inspect some of these things closely in the lab. We have to do molecular sequencing, sometimes do the entire genomes before we are able to get insights into what these species are, how they're different from other species, what are their special adaptations, and then, of course, how to protect them in the long term. So some of that work happens back in the lab. So we have this biodiversitycollections.in where you can read more about the kinds of species that we have discovered and the whole process of species discovery and the people who are involved in this particular project, not only students but also these professional medical doctors and others who are working with us in all these scientific projects. And if you want to know more about this, you should visit my lab website, which is at biodiversitylab.in. And here you can read, under research, you can read about the research in our lab, some of the prominent research projects, including, I'll go up a little bit, diversity and evolution of beds in mimicry in swallowtail butterflies, wing color pattern evolution, mimicry and speciation in swallowtail butterflies, of course, genetics and developmental biology of sexual dimorphism and mimicry in swallowtail butterflies, but also ecology, biogeography, phylogenetics, and conservation of Indian butterflies on the whole. And then, of course, things about dragonflies and damselflies, butterfly migrations, species discovery, all kinds of things. So you can find out more about it under publications. You can read more about the kinds of things that we publish every year, and that will be again something that students who might want to pursue on the discoveries that we have made want to read. So this will be quite helpful as well. And with that, I will stop. We have already gone past 1 hour, but if you have more questions, of course, one of you can organize another program where we can explore more aspects, further aspects of the research that we do, and especially the biodiversity sciences that we are involved in, pushing up the envelope of this scientific frontier in biodiversity sciences, especially in India, which had not really had a movement to document biodiversity and to understand it, not only from the conservation perspective, which has been done for some time, but also more from the scientific perspective, understanding how biodiversity has evolved in the larger landscape and seascape of India, to how specific organisms have evolved in relation to, let's say, biogeographic barriers that exist in India, how that has restricted the flow of species and populations to other areas, and what that restricted gene flow has done to species formation and species adaptations within this great landscape. So those are the kinds of things I would always be very keen on chatting about. And I will always have stories about how we have discovered a new species or our fieldwork in Northeast India or Southern India or elsewhere in India. Today is my last day of fieldwork. I made time because this was the only day when this could be done by SciComm Synapse. And again, I'm thankful for this opportunity to talk to you about this. So with that, I will stop please explore our websites, please explore our work. And if you're interested, under join the lab and under contact at the end of at the bottom of this website, you will have my contact details. So get in touch if you're interested. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Professor Kunte, if you have a little bit time, we have one question from the audience, if
Sure.
you allow me. Yeah, so the question is how differentiate male female butterfly in
Mhm.
Lycanthia family. So
Okay.
you know, how do you differentiate male and female butterfly in Lycanthia family?
Okay. So lysinids are popularly known as blues and hair streaks. They're also known as gossamer wing butterflies. So these are usually tiny butterflies. Some of them are not bigger than a thumbnail. And the smallest butterfly in India and in the world is also from this particular family. Blues are really spectacular in terms of their color patterns. Males often are either blue or bright red or green on the upper side, and many of the species have really shining coloration. It's not just blue, it's not just green, it's shining green. Even if the butterflies may be brown or black, they may have a blue sheen on their wings. Some of them have violet sheen, some of them have uh, orange sheen or reddish sheen. So that is something which is pretty striking about these butterflies. But another thing striking, going back to one of my favorite themes, sexual dimorphism in nature, blues or these lysinids are extremely sexually dimorphic. Again, males and females may look entirely different on the upper side. Their undersides are usually similar. They may differ by a small spot there or a small band there, but the upper sides are usually entirely different between males and females. So males are typically a lot more brightly colored and a lot with a lot deeper coloration, which with these are very strong, very brilliant colors on really dark background, almost velvety pitch black background, which enhances these colors a lot more. Whereas females tend to be slightly less intense black, and their colors tend to be less deep or less intense. And that is the easiest way to distinguish between males and females. In many species, males have slightly narrower pointed wings, which presumably helps them fly very fast, and females have slightly rounded wings, and that very slight difference in their wing shape is related to their biology, how they fly, and so on and so forth. I really have to show this to you in the field or using pictures, but these are some of the ways in which you can distinguish between male and female. And the things I mentioned are coloration, wing shape, and then their biology, which feeds into all these different morphological features and their behavior. As I mentioned, their flight pattern is also different, not just the wing shape, which contributes to flight behavior, but that is quite distinct between males and females as well. So these are some of the ways in which you can distinguish between them. Some of these same things can also be used to distinguish between male and female in most other butterfly families too.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I would like to extend heartfelt gratitude to you for sharing your time, your knowledge, and your inspiring insights, Professor Kunde. Thank you for guiding us, motivating us, and giving us so much to think about. We deeply appreciate your presence and the value that you brought to this conversation.
Can I
Truly
say
honored.
very quickly?
Yeah, sorry.
Can I quickly say one thing
Yeah,
before
sure.
we conclude
Yeah,
this?
yeah, sure.
Uh, I hope that I have illustrated with my own life and career that you can do a great career, and there doesn't have to be a boundary between what you're passionate about and the career that you build. There are very few careers which give you this kind of opportunity. And fortunately, I happen to be passionate about something in which a great career was also possible. This career also puts me in the field a lot of times. If you look at my uh, uh, Facebook account, you will see lots of pictures and lots of field experiences. One of my latest ones is on a double rainbow that I saw in Arunachal Pradesh last month. These are kinds of things that our field allows us to do. Not only chase butterflies, but also chase rainbows in the field. And I was seeing rainbows nearly every day during field work on this trip. These are kinds of things which are quite pleasurable. So this line which a lot of people feel is real doesn't have to exist between your passion and your career. And I would encourage everybody to explore not only what their passion is, but also how to turn that into a career by blurring this artificial boundary between passion and profession. And I hope that a lot of you will be able to do that with some inspiration and a lot of perspiration, as they say. You have to work your butt off, but if you do that and if you have talent to whatever you're pursuing as your passion, you can be successful. And that's one message I would like to end on. I know a lot of young people are struggling, trying to see how they fit into their life and their career, what they should do. Should I listen to this parent or that parent, or what I have in my mind, and exactly who to talk to if you're not able to make a decision. I hope that this presentation, this program, will help you wade through these weeds and then find yourself uh, with a little bit of struggle, but yes, a little bit late perhaps sometimes, but it will help you find yourself and also make a career in which you're going to be happy and deeply satisfied, as I am in this career. Yeah. So I'll stop with that. And again, thanks a lot.
Yeah, so you brought a lot of clarity and purpose and enlightenment to the session, and the session was filled with a lot of knowledge, and that too on a deeper basis. So this brought us a lot of learnings, and it is actually a really fruitful session. So we really thank you for coming to the session to have a really wonderful podcast. And now to the audience, thank you everyone for attending this wonderful session with Dr. And Professor Kunte. And we really appreciate if you would take a moment to really share the feedback for the next event to make it little better and energized one. So there's a link to the feedback form in the comment box to receive e-certificates. So if you have any information, visit www.thescicommsynapse.in. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until then, think, grow, and share. So
Bye,
with
everyone.
this, bye bye. Have a
Follow me
great
on
day.
Facebook and other social media. And hopefully, I'll see you in the field next year in Arunachal Pradesh.
Of course. We are ready and we are awaiting that session. Thank you so much, Professor, and bye. Have a great day. Thank you.